My name is Diane Morgan. I'm head of talent at Zinc. Really excited to be able to talk to you today and to be able to kick off this workshop about the Catalyst Healthy Aging Awards with our colleagues from UKRI and our colleagues from the Zinc team. This is going to be a 90-minute session. We have a couple of activities, and that's where the break is built in for you to jump out if you need to have a comfort break while we do some of the activities, or to maybe make a cup of tea. The format's going to be that we have a presentation, then we have some interactive, and then hearing from some different people that are going to be talking to you about what it means to do entrepreneurial research and how this award can best support you. So I think, Tim, if you're going to pull up the, great, if you can go to the next slide. So you'll be hearing from myself today, first from Natasha Richardson from UKRI, talking about the grant and the partnership. Tim Shakespeare on the Zinc team is going to be leading a problem-led innovation workshop portion. And then Beth Mason on the Zinc team is going to be walking you through why this new type of application and how do you actually apply. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Natasha to kick us off.
Thanks, Diane. So I'm Natasha Richardson. I'm Senior Portfolio Manager within UKRI working on the Healthy Aging Challenge. I'm also joined by my colleague Heidi today. I just wanted Heidi to say hi.
Hello, hi, I'm supporting on the Catalyst Awards and very pleased to see you all.
Great, thanks Heidi. So the Healthy Aging Catalyst Awards are part of this global grand challenge, which is run by our partners in the US called the National Academy of Medicine, and it's part of the Healthy Longevity Global Grand Challenge. And it was funded by the NAM as a worldwide movement to improve physical, mental and social well-being for people as they age. The initiative aims to comprehensively address challenges and opportunities presented by global population aging, to catalyse breakthrough ideas and research that will extend the human health span, to generate transformative and scalable innovations worldwide, and to build a broad ecosystem of support by enabling scientists, engineers, innovators, entrepreneurs, researchers, health leaders, policymakers, and the public to work together to achieve the promise of healthy longevity. And as well as the US National Academy of Medicine, the challenge has global funding partners from the UK, which is UK Research and Innovation, from the US, from Japan, China, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Chile. So it's quite widespread. UKRI is the funder and the partner for the UK part of the challenge, and we work with Zinc, who are our delivery partner, to support the Catalyst Awards in healthy aging. Next slide, please, Tim. So just a little bit more on UKRI. So we are a £7 billion a year funding agency in the UK, and we are a non-departmental public body. We receive our funding from the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, and we fund researchers and innovators across disciplines and across sectors. And the aim of UKRI is to, through our funding councils, create knowledge with impact to make the impossible possible. Next slide, please, Tim. So the Healthy Aging Challenge Awards are funding awards of 62,500 at 100% FEC, of which UKRI will contribute 80% FEC, so that's £50,000. And it comes along with this 9-month programme of support from Zinc, who are our delivery partners. And the aim is to catalyse transformative innovation and to inform policies and priorities to advance healthy aging and longevity globally through these awards. They're intended for really high risk, high reward innovations that would not normally be funded through standard streams. So it's not a standard research grant type of funding. It really is looking for early stage innovation through these awards. And the catalysts represent the start of the pipeline in the healthy aging funding ecosystem to help entrepreneurial researchers to develop spin-outs and ventures, both commercial and social. Next slide, please. So moving on a little bit to the Healthy Aging Grand Challenge. So the Healthy Aging Grand Challenge is part of the industrial strategy, and there were 4 grand challenge aims under this strategy that was issued by the government. The Healthy Aging Challenge is looking to address the Aging Society Grand Challenge within the industrial strategy and wants to make sure that everyone can remain active, productive, independent and socially connected across generations for as long as possible, and to narrow the gap between the experiences of the richest and the poorest. And so the Catalyst Awards are driving towards these two main aims as part of the strategic need for why we're putting funding into this initiative. We've partnered with Zinc to deliver the awards because we recognise they have specific expertise as early stage innovation experts who are adept at experimentation and acceleration of ideas, and in particular their expertise in helping really talented people to have and create large-scale social impact from their ideas. We expect that applicants to the Catalyst Awards will benefit enormously from engaging with Zinc during their application journey. And this learning and development will come via this application process and benefit everyone who comes along this journey, regardless of the funding outcomes. So we really encourage you to engage with this opportunity today and with the application process. And the problem development workshop that you're coming to today is the first stage in this process. And then there will be an expression of interest that will open in February. And for those that are shortlisted from that, they get additional support from Zinc between the expression of interest and full proposal stage. This is of real added value, and it goes far beyond what we could do in a standard research call, and it befits the unique nature of this funding opportunity. So with that, I will move back over to say, Diane, if you want to pick up and tell people a bit more.
Great. Thanks so much, Natasha. So Zinc was started in 2017 as a way to really look at tackling problems in a completely different way, focused on building commercial businesses on mission areas. We focus on 4 areas. Those are the mental health, those left behind by automation and globalization. We will be focusing on the environment and later life. And this is where we ended up partnering with UKRI. Our 3rd mission was about adding 5 extra healthy years to a longer life. And what we do is work very closely to work with people from all over the world who care deeply and passionately about being able to think differently to solve really big, challenging societal problems. We bring together founders in our Venture Builder program, where we're tackling these from the very, very early start. This is where we have our expertise, working with new ideas, new ways to look at problems, and new ways to actually build products and services. Now, Catalyst Award, the outcomes may or may not be commercial. They may be transferring, they may be licensing, they may be further research, but the idea is, can you look at something in a really new and compelling way? We have an in-house R&D team that also is looking at research in a new way in terms of how do you apply some of this innovation? How do you build evidence-based businesses that are extremely user-focused? So we're really excited to be partnering with UKRI when we think about these high-risk, high-rewards that you're taking as researchers to actually sustain the research that you're doing beyond the life of the grant. And that's really what Zinc can bring to you. So I'd love to get started by having Tim Shakespeare kick off the workshop portion.
Hi, thank you, Dan. Yeah, great to be with you today and to talk through our kind of problem-led innovation approach. So we've heard from Natasha about the Healthy Aging Challenge. And with these awards, we're giving researchers an opportunity to work in a really different way, to work on early stage innovation and shifting from the kind of traditional research outputs that we might often see, research papers, talking at conferences, to having the outputs as developing new products and services and getting them into the hands of the people that need them most. And this is something I've been thinking about and working on for a long time, from being a postdoc, working out how I could make my research immediately useful for the people with dementia that I worked with, through working in the innovation team at Alzheimer's Society, developing new products and services for people with dementia, and also supporting innovators such as the team behind Jelly Drops, whose hydrating sweets you can see in the bottom right there. And I think for a lot of researchers, making a difference to people's lives is what we got into this for, and our excitement and creativity in doing that can sometimes be stifled by the university culture that can take over, and also the limited scope of grants, of lots of traditional grants we can apply for. So what I hope is that the Catalyst Awards can be an opportunity to step away from some of the constraints of traditional grants and get in touch with your creativity, get in touch with your purpose and the things you're really passionate about. And when you do that, there's really endless possibilities for what you could create. So I've put like just 3 examples on the right there. But I'm interested to learn about the products and services that you've seen that you feel do a great job of improving quality of life. And also in this workshop, it's about having lots of opportunities for interaction and for you to learn from each other as well. So I'd like you to take a moment to think about examples you've seen, examples you've been impressed by, maybe universities, from charities, from companies, taking a focus on later life, and put them in the chat. So yeah, it'd be great to see what kind of examples, what kind of inspiration you see is out there for putting research into innovation. So there's a few examples that came to my mind to illustrate the kind of wide variety of approaches that are out there, from an app that helps people like the gentleman in the photo at the top there live an active later life, to one of the previous Catalyst projects working with housing developers to create houses that can adapt to meet people's needs as they age. And also the jelly drops that I mentioned, helping people to stay hydrated, often in care homes. So yeah, please do share examples that you can think of that are great products that are improving quality of later life. And I'll keep an eye out for those in the chat and refer back to them and share them. So Sophia's shared hug there, which I think is one of the programs that's being taken forwards with support from the Alzheimer's Society Innovation Team just recently, and is really a great device to kind of build interaction with people who have dementia. So that's a great example. Do share some more. So when we make this shift from research to innovation, we think about that as supporting that through an entrepreneurial approach to research translation and learning from the tried and tested methods that we use at Zinc to launch new ventures. And the really key things I want to get across in this workshop as we make that shift are, one, to think big. And we talk about taking an entrepreneurial approach, and part of that's having a really big vision that's important to you. So I'm going to start off the workshop by digging into this a bit more and sharing some of the views of the Catalyst award holders who are currently working on their projects. Then second is to choose the right problem, and we'll do some exercises together to explore the problem areas that you're interested in a bit more detail. Then third is about understanding your users, and it's how it's really key to get clarity on who you want to reach, how users experience a problem, and to do that before jumping in with solutions. And then finally, it's really important to know that you don't need to know everything right now. There'll be some areas where you're already experts, and I hope there'll also be some areas that you might not have considered yet. But the point of this program, the program support from Zinc, is that it's designed to help you work out what are those unknowns and support you to find the answers. And later on, we'll be joined by one of the current Catalyst award holders, Sarah Campbell, who will share some of her thoughts. And then Beth's going to talk through how we've designed the application process to reflect this approach as well. And we'll have a Q&A for any questions. Feel free to put any questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll either answer them as we go or pick them up at the end. Fran is saying that she can't hear. Can everyone else hear okay? Or is it? Fran, you can hear okay?
I'm not sure if it's the location that we're at. So if you could just drop in people hearing in the chat, then it might just be something in our location. Okay, it looks like everybody can hear too. So
right. I'll keep going.
Sorry.
No worries at all. So I'm going to start off by talking through a few of the kind of examples of what I mean by this entrepreneurial approach and this way of tackling problems. And I hope that these examples kind of demonstrate the ambitious vision, the determination to reach a large scale, the deep understanding of users and the problems that they experience, and also the flexibility to change directions and to develop your approach as you progress, which I think are really important parts of this entrepreneurial mindset. So I think a really great example to start off with of kind of how this entrepreneurial approach can help, what the power can be, is Colin Espy and this startup called Sleepio. So Colin Espy is a sleep researcher, And he was really frustrated with the fact that there are some really effective interventions out there for sleep, but they just weren't being used in practice. And he ended up co-founding a digital healthcare company called Big Health and developed their product Sleepio, which is a digital cognitive behavioral therapy program. And it's a really breakthrough example of an innovation tackling a big problem and using the methods of scaling available to startups to develop a really effective and engaging intervention that reaches millions of people. 6.9 million sleep diaries have been saved on the Sleepio app. And last year they raised $39 million in investment funding. So that gives an idea of the scale that they're reaching. But another thing that makes Sleepio really stand out is their commitment to being evidence-based. And they've carried out high quality research, including 40 peer-reviewed papers, 10 randomized clinical control trials. And that's because of Colin's commitment to putting research at the center of the company. And I think it's a really great example of how an entrepreneurial approach can get something really useful into the hands of thousands of people. So next, I want us to hear from Ida Suarez-Gonzalez, who's one of the researchers in the current cohort of the Catalyst Awards. And she's going to tell us a bit about what being entrepreneurial means to her and her ambition.
In my case, in the case of many researchers, I think that it is about you having a piece of research that can make an impact, that can change the life of other people, that can make their lives better. And you have that piece of research and you want to transform it, to bring it to the real world, and you feel passionate. That's it. That's the spirit. I think that long term, something that I said during the application process, and I strongly believe, is I would like to see this e-reader, this software available everywhere and for everyone. This is my ambition. I want anyone in the world to have free access to this assistive technology that enables reading. So anyone with brain injury and reading difficulties can have the opportunity to read again. That is my ambition.
So you can hear that Ida has a passion for helping people to read. She has a deep understanding of this problem area, being her area of research, and she has a vision. And though she doesn't yet have the model that will make that happen, she's got a plan for her next steps towards it. And it's a big part of what we're working with her on in the Catalyst program.
In my case, in the case
the next example is one I'm aware of as it came out of the research centre I used to work at, and it's called Calgera. It's started by Dexter Penn. So whilst doing research with people who have dementia, Dexter heard from individuals about their experience of losing huge amounts of money through fraud. And some of these stories really stuck with him, and he decided to do something about it. And I found this an interesting example because fraud prevention wasn't Dexter's area of expertise, but his research experience allowed him to understand his users and to see the problem. And by creating this startup, Dexter's attracted funding to build a team with the expertise that he needs to build a solution. And one piece of advice from Dexter is to have an open mind about the best way to deploy a solution. So Dexter's initial response was to build a service offering advice and support to older individuals. But when he started talking to people with experience in the area, he found that it was going to be really difficult to achieve scale that way. So he changed direction, still keeping the same central goal of reducing fraud, but instead developing technology to detect financial vulnerability and unusual patterns of spending, and then to partner with banks to get it used. So that kind of flexible approach, being able to change the solution based on advice and based on evidence from testing, is something we're really keen to see in the Catalyst Awards. I've got one more point of view to share from another Catalyst Award holder, this time Susan Dewhurst, who's based at Bournemouth University and is developing a community-based approach to reduce falls.
Entrepreneurial spirit, for me, it's just getting something out there. So for me, it's not about the financial rewards. Yes, that's of course important to keep things running, but for me, it's just seeing something out there that's been utilised by the public or the community. That to me is my end goal.
So here's how I sum it up. We've heard one aspect really clearly from the examples I just shared, and that's having a strong passion and vision for delivering a new solution into people's hands. And you'll hear about this when we talk about the application process later. We want to try and get an understanding of you as a person, what really drives you and what's the impact that you want to have. Another quality that they share is the determination to get things done, shifting gears from research timelines through to creating outputs that people can use and start testing them quickly. And related to that is having the flexibility to change direction based on what those tests show. Another key element is being problem focused, and we're going to dive into that next. So starting from a deep understanding of the problem you're solving to allow greater creativity in how you go about finding that solution, and being focused on your users, understanding the people you're solving for, and that can increase your chances of success. And then another aspect I think it's important to mention now, but we'll come back to at a later stage in the application process and in the program of support, is helping you find some kind of model that enables growth, that will take this project beyond the 12 months of the Catalyst Awards to become something that's scalable and sustainable and continues to grow. So next, we're going to get into that problem-led approach in a bit more detail, and I'm going to take you through a couple of exercises to get you thinking about this for your projects. But first, just a quick point to kind of illustrate why we think it's important to start with a problem. And the answer is we see far too many solutions that are led by people who come up with a solution and then search for new problems for it to solve. So this example is an airbag belt. It was developed by a company that specializes in wearable airbags for motorcycling. And then they adapted this to protect people when they fall. So I wanted to think about what are your first impressions. Let me know in your chat what you think of this as a solution for older people who might be at risk of falls. Do you love it? Do you hate it? You're not sure? Are there certain problems you see straight away, or are there things you think will work really well about it? Feel free to put in the chat. So one person saying it's stigmatizing. So there's a number of assumptions that have been made when people are kind of developing these solutions. And if these assumptions aren't true, it's unlikely to be a successful product. So one of the assumptions that's made is people are going to want to wear a bulky belt. So people saying people aren't going to want to use it, it's ugly. And actually there's been a Cochrane review of hip protectors that concludes often people don't wear hip protectors when they are provided. They've also assumed it's going to be safe to use this in a way when it's designed, technology that's designed for a very different purpose and a very different demographic of people. And they've also designed a very expensive solution. So do they know that customers are going to be willing to pay? So answering these questions early would have given an opportunity to take a different approach to the problem and find a potentially more attractive solution. And it's unfair to kind of single out one company. There's actually been a review of different approaches of fall detection systems that's concluded that fall detection systems have focused mainly on the kind of technical aspects, but little attention has been given to the specific needs and the views of older people. So I want us to avoid making that mistake and to start thinking in detail about the problem we want to solve. So in a moment, I'm going to get you to think about the problem you're interested in and the causes and consequences of that problem, to be really clear about the part of it that you should be targeting. And first, I'm going to talk through an example. So the example I'm going to talk through is oral health, which is an important issue in later life. Research from the Royal College of Surgeons suggests there are 1.8 million people over 65 with urgent dental conditions. And there's also falling use of dentures, which is a good news story, but it's also leading to increased complexity in dental care as people keep their own teeth for longer. So let's map out this problem space. Now, obviously, it's a rough example, but hopefully this helps illustrate the point. So when we think about oral health, we can then start thinking about what the causes of poor oral health might be. And I did a bit of research to find out kind of key issues, which included things like difficulty brushing, people having a dry mouth, which can happen more frequently in later life, and also due to certain medications, and also lack of treatment for when people do have cavities or other oral health issues. And then we continue looking back, we can ask why again, so why those causes exist. And you can find another level. So people might have difficulty brushing because of reduced dexterity. People might have a dry mouth because of medication side effects. People might not go for treatment if they're concerned about cost. And we can continue asking these questions to find out more and more and find out what the root causes of problems are. Sometimes they can be better places to target our efforts. And similarly, we can go forwards and ask, so what? Why does this matter? What are the consequences? So you can take one step forwards and think about how poor oral health might lead to poor nutrition. There's some evidence that poor oral health increases the risk of aspiration pneumonia. And also that when your oral health isn't looked after, people may well experience quite a lot of pain. And again, you can think, so what again, and go reach out wider to find out what the consequences of these things are. So poor nutrition might lead to declining general health. Aspiration pneumonia can lead to shortness of breath. And dental pain can lead to disturbed sleep, which again, in turn, may have further knock-on consequences. So you can see when we start to map out the problem, you see a lot of different areas that develop in terms of the causes and consequences of a particular problem space. And there are a couple of other crucial aspects as well. For all of these, we can think about who is involved, who are the stakeholders, who are the people affected. So in this case, it may be older adults, family, friends and carers, also health and social services. And also emphasize the importance. So why is this space as a whole one we should pay attention to? So in this case, it might be those stats I mentioned at the start about the number of people with urgent conditions and the trends that are happening in this space as well. So perhaps the falling use of dentures and increased complexity in care. One thing we can tend to do when we're looking at this is to think about it from a kind of, I don't know, like a scientific or a policy or what we might think is a neutral perspective. But it can be really helpful when thinking about where the most interesting or important place to intervene be. It can be helpful to switch to a user's perspective. So poor nutrition might become more about lack of enjoyment at meal times. Poor oral health might become less central as a concept, but tooth pain might be something that older people really identify with and want a solution for. So it might become more central in this problem space as something that we want to focus on. So one really useful aspect of mapping this out is to make a decision as to where we should start with our focus. Is it in prevention, detection? Is it in treatment? Maybe on reflection, we actually want to shift our focus to nutrition. And it could depend on the skills that I have. So for example, if I know nutrition is important, but it just doesn't interest me, but I do know a lot about dental services, perhaps that's where I should focus my efforts. Or it could depend on what's important to users. If I know people aren't thinking about aspiration pneumonia and I know it's a weaker link, but I know that dental pain is something really important to people, perhaps I should focus there. The point is to map out this space and make a really conscious decision about where to start and why, depending on what's important to users, where your interests and passion and your abilities lie. So now I want to turn it over to you to think through a problem that you're interested in, and give you 5 minutes to kind of do a bit of thinking and write some notes on this. So I'd like you to write down the problem that you have in mind that you want to solve, and then work backwards, ask why does this problem exist, and note some of the key causes. And then also work forwards, ask so what, and note some of the consequences. Then take a look at that problem space that you've mapped out and think, what does that look like from the user's perspective? And also, where are you placed, best placed to intervene? So I'm going to pause now and give you 5 minutes to do that. And when we come back, I'll see if a few of you are willing to, and able to share some of the thoughts that you've had during that. So we'll come back just before 20 to 1, and it'll be great to see what your thoughts have been over that time. Okay, let's come back and see where you've got to. You might not have finished yet, you might have had some initial thoughts, or you might have got this all down in 2 minutes and then had a few minutes to have a break. So let's see where we're at. When I can see you've got your hand up, so it'd be great to hear if you have thought this through, how you've thought about your problem, if you've seen anything that perhaps you hadn't thought about before. It'd be great to hear how you found this.
Thank you. I threw myself under the spotlight because you can see I'm from China. I believe a good system should facilitate people who are really competent to do the job. It's what you know, it's not who you know. So it's hard. So I really want to develop a system which can provide better job person workplace match, especially for 50 plus, because for many of them, they haven't been in the job market for so long. they have no someone to talk to.
Mhm.
So I thought it's like a diagnosis. If they can ask, I would like to apply to be a nurse in NHS in Leicester. Then the AI tell them what did the nurse say about this workplace.
Yeah,
you know?
that's great. That's interesting. And I like that word diagnosis as well. So what the kind of solution you're interested in is around diagnosis, but that's also kind of what we're doing here with the problem is kind of diagnosing the problem, what's causing it, what can we do to intervene? So I think that's a great example. Thank you for sharing that. I think in the chat, Simon said he's also up for speaking. Simon, if you're happy to come off mute and tell us a bit about how you're thinking about your problem.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I've identified a problem. I'm not sure yet about the solutions, which seem at the moment to be quite labor intensive and not amenable, particularly to an IT solution, which I'd like to work towards. So it concerns dementia patients, older people, I guess, in their 80s, the kind of more typical dementia patients who get it locked into a kind of routine that institutionalizes them, instead of reacting in the here and now. I've done, because my background is linguistics, and it seems to me that there are fewer disfluencies in the here and now speech, looking at corpora of conversations with dementia patients who act spontaneously, rather than when they tell stories, which is the typical exercise that visitors take part in to try and draw patients out. So how to increase the here and now conversation? I think it involves building on what was done in North America, in Carolina, which is more student visitors, but that could also be confusing for the patient if they have too many new faces. So yeah, there are lots of things for me to think about and try to figure out.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think that's really, really interesting problem area, and already to kind of thinking ahead to kind of solutions and where you might find examples that are interesting to apply from. I think what's nice about the kind of space we have in this process and the kind of early innovation process is having that time and space to really think about the problem in more detail, and think exactly about who are those people that experience these issues, what are the problems, how do they experience, how does it make them feel, how does it affect their families, really think through all those different aspects that could be around there for the problem, and that will help us when we come to think about the solution to make sure we're really getting that on the nail too. I think we've got time to hear from one more person. I think Wendy, in the chat you mentioned you're happy to share, so if you've got something you'd like to share, feel free to come off mute.
Hi, hello. Yeah, so I've just been sort of enjoying trying to sort of prototype the problem. I don't really know what the solution is, but I've got some ideas around copying a social enterprise that's been very successful in Oxford, which brought older people together to develop resilience. And they particularly came together around the agenda of climate change, which they cared about very deeply. But I'm hoping that I might be able to kind of modify that model. And the problem really that I'm hoping to address is that there is no local connection with other people about the issues to be dealt with as we age. And so the causes that I've just listed were people don't like thinking or talking about being old. I'm healthy and independent now, why should I be thinking about that? The local authority care and support system is very individualized. So actually no one knows anything about care and support until you need it. And that's when then you have to go and kind of look for help. And then other issues around denial, being embarrassed. So my innovation, I hope, is going to be around trying to just build a conversation and get a way for people to share information and knowledge around these issues, and starting early, kind of starting at my age, you know, midlife. that's my aim.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks for sharing that. So I hope that's been interesting to kind of take a step back and look at where our problem fits in the wider context, and kind of making sure we're choosing the right area to focus on, the right problem to focus on, but also through doing this, finding out some aspects that are going to be really important for us to build into our solutions, or some things we should be aware of when we do come to build our solution, that are based on this understanding of the problem, that will help us to be successful and to avoid those kind of same mistakes that perhaps we saw with the airbag belt at the start. So now it's time to dive into a bit more detail and think about the issue of taking a user's perspective and how that can change our thinking on how we tackle the problem. And the principle here is to understand it's really important to understand what your users want, not just in terms of the function of your product, but also how it fits into their lives and their social and emotional needs too. And there's a really famous example of a case of a kind of innovation study. So the examples of McDonald's, who are worried about their milkshake sales and competing products from Burger King. And they were initially trying to make a better milkshake, and they got customers into the McDonald's offices to hear their views, and they wanted to understand what customers did and didn't like about their milkshakes. And they tried to improve the product based on that feedback, but they had limited success. And at that point, they got a professor specializing in innovation to advise them. And he looked at the problem from a different perspective, visiting restaurants to observe who was buying milkshakes, when they were buying them, and asking the customers questions outside the restaurants to understand what job a milkshake was doing for them in their lives. And by doing that research, what they found out was that customers were buying milkshakes in the morning to grab and eat in the car on the way to work. They wanted a snack that would give them something to do on a long commute, that wouldn't make a mess when they eat it with one hand on the steering wheel and one hand picking it up. And they wanted something that would keep them full until lunch. And by understanding the experience that people wanted, the job that the milkshake was doing in their lives, they could make changes to the product and changes to the marketing that successfully increased their sales. So thinking through how people relate to products in this way is a framework called Jobs to be Done. And it's used by companies to understand how to innovate and how to improve their offering to customers. And this framework's evolved to go beyond just the functional, and to make sure that innovators are thinking about how people want to feel and how they want to be seen by others too. But we don't want to sell more milkshakes with the Catalyst Awards. We want to use these tools to improve later life. So let's think about the problems you're solving and what are the functional, emotional, and social needs that your users will be looking for. So we've got a shorter activity here to think through this. So think about the problem you're solving. Think about the people that you want to solve it for, and what's the functional job to be done. In the kind of oral health example, that might be having your tooth fixed, having less pain, being able to enjoy meal times. What's the emotional job to be done? How do people want to feel as they have a solution to this problem? And what's the social job to be done? How do people want to be perceived by others? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes until 10 to 1, and I'll come back. It'd be great to hear some of your thoughts about how you hope to make your users feel with the solutions that you develop. This is also a great time to go and grab a drink if you need to. And so I'm going to go and grab some water while we wait as well. Okay, I'm going to stop you there and we'll keep going with the rest of the workshop. But it'd be great if I could ask you to share in the chat your thoughts on who your user might be, what you think their functional need is, what you think their emotional need is, what you think their social need might be. And I think, so yeah, it'd be great to see your thoughts on that and where you've got to. So I think when we bring this understanding of the problem space together, along with understanding people's wants and needs, and start to look for a solution, there's a sweet spot that we're aiming for. And that's squarely in the important problem space, but then at the intersection of these three factors. It should be desirable, that people want it. It should be feasible, in that we've got the skills and resources to create it. And it should be viable, meaning that we can find a way to keep the project alive and growing. And we don't expect to hit on that solution right away, but the best way to find a solution that does these things is to create something and to start testing it, and then see how we can adapt it to get where we need to be. So if we create a solution that is feasible and desirable, but we can't find the business model to make it grow, then we adapt, we try something different, until we kind of find that sweet spot. And that's a really important part of why our application process is different. As you'll hear in a moment, we do want to hear about your ideas, but we want to have an open conversation about them. We don't expect you to have all the answers, but if you can identify the key questions that will affect its success, you can start to set out a plan to get to grips with the answers and be in a really strong position that way. Thank you to everyone who's starting to share in the chat your thoughts about your users and what you want to offer them. That's really great to see. And so there's one more aspect I wanted to mention around kind of changing mindset from research to innovation, and that's the shift in the kinds of activities that are important. So we spoke earlier about the shift in outputs from research to innovation, from generating knowledge, getting people products in people's hands. And that means approaching the activities we do in a different way too. And it involves a shift in the mindset from the academic mindset, which emphasizes rigor and creating generalizable knowledge, to one that emphasizes speed and just enough research to make the next version better. And of course, what just enough research means will depend on what you're doing. So there might be highly regulated areas like medical devices where things still need to be stringent, but there's many areas where there's a lot more freedom to start real world testing early. And it's about shifting from long experiments that focus on whether the product's effective under ideal conditions to repeated cycles of building prototypes, user testing, market research, to establish an approach that answers all of those questions around feasibility, desirability, and viability, not just about the product. So a popular approach to building a startup defines a key to successful product development as being how quickly and productively you can move through loops of learning to generate new ideas, build something real, creating something you can test, measuring the response to that, whether that's qualitative or quantitative, and then using those results to learn and feed into the ideas for your next build in a process of weeks or months, rather than the longer kind of multiple month research projects we're often used to. So this iterative approach to product development is something we're really keen to see in terms of the kinds of activities that people will be doing throughout the Catalyst Awards. So I've talked about the shift in mindset from research to innovation. And I had a really interesting conversation about this recently with one of the current Catalyst cohort members, who's Sarah Campbell. And we were reflecting on the skills that researchers have, thinking that actually we're drawing on a lot of the key scientific and research skills here, but perhaps in a slightly different way for early stage innovation. And Sarah offered to have a chat here and share some of those thoughts with us. So I thought, I just saw Sarah join in the meeting as well. So Sarah, are you there?
Hey Tim, yes, I'm here.
Hi, great, thank you. Thank you very much for joining, just at the right point as well. So yeah, I wonder if I could ask you a few questions and you could kind of share your thoughts around the kind of Catalyst Awards and that shift from kind of research to early stage innovation. So I wanted to start off by asking you, what are the skills that you think researchers have that make them really well placed for this kind of early stage innovation work?
Yeah, great question. So I think as researchers, we're really well trained in how to create assumptions or research questions and how to test those through building up a good evidence base. And I think that's really perfect for this kind of project and this kind of work. I think it took me a while to kind of mentally shift and recognize that the research skills I had were exactly the skills that were necessary for market research, user research, testing assumptions. And I think it would be really helpful to have kind of had that pointed out to me earlier, like actually, you know how to, a hypothesis, it's just an assumption, go and test it. And I think one of the things that I found challenging is understanding that the level of evidence that we might look to get in academic research is too time intensive for this kind of project and to move quickly. And for me, it's been quite interesting to figure out, how do I take my skills and that rigor, but do it in a fast way, in a timely manner, and what standard of evidence is good enough? And I found that talking to people in business has been really helpful to kind of help me on that journey.
That's great. That's really interesting. Thank you. And I was wondering, are there other kind of skills that you feel that people sometimes need to develop as they make that shift?
I think the really big one for me has been trying to get out of an academic style of writing and communication and into more of a marketing and style of writing. And I definitely don't have that skill yet. And someone once said to me, they said, you know what, don't even try and develop it, just ask someone to help you with it. I have got better at it, but I think as an academic, you know, I was always like, what's the evidence, you know, referencing it all. And people just don't care about that in business. It's about sharp, snappy, and basically overselling it. So I think a really good piece of advice is oversell the vision and where you want to get to, rather than stating in formal language what you will have achieved in the project. I think that's been a really big one for me that I still struggle with.
Okay, great. And I think applicants to the Catalyst Awards are going to have a chance to practice that in their expression of interest. Well, we'll be asking one for a lay summary. So it's about putting things in really easily understandable, clear words that kind of users will understand. So not for researchers, not for technical people at all. But then also we do ask for that vision and getting people to start working on clearly stating that. So I think hopefully our expression of interest is a good place for people to start testing out some of those skills.
Yeah, I think it's about thinking about, if this was a 10-year project, what would you be saying you've got to at the end of 10 years? And that's your vision.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And then I was wondering as well about, we've kind of talked in this workshop a little bit about the kind of human-centered design and kind of innovation approaches. And I wondered what you think the kind of potential is for using those approaches in the kind of problems that researchers are often interested in.
I mean, I'm a user-centered researcher and everything we do is co-design, and it's just so invaluable. I mean, I've just actually done the focus group for the first focus group for our Catalyst Award this morning, and it's just, you know, I've been reading all the papers and I got more value from talking to 13 people and listening to their experience in an hour than I have from 4 months of reading the literature. And it's just really exciting, and hearing that actually there is a consistency of issue, there are clear problems that need solving, but also understanding what incredible value a group of people have to bring from their life experience. And I think that's one of the really exciting things about older adults in particular, is they've got such a wealth of life experience, and people don't see it. One of them just said to me, she said, you know, they think we're just old people and that none of us have done anything in our lives. And actually they've got all this to bring, and they know what the problems are. I don't know what the problem is. And, you know, this kind of approach, I think, is really important for understanding the problem, but also for designing the right solution. You know, I see, particularly in tech, an awful lot of cool ideas and designs, and then people wonder why no one adopts it. And it's because actually that's not what people need. It's not what they want. I've seen it quite a lot in some of my research, where people design great reminiscence products, but consistently find that care homes don't have the resource to embed it. But consistently people create more reminiscence products. The problem is, how do you get the resource to embed this in the system that exists? So I think this type of project is really exciting for really looking at the real problem and designing for that, rather than you know, which I've definitely got a tendency to do, is design the thing I want to design. And we're working really hard to not come up with a solution until we've done our sessions. And it's really hard because you want to jump to the solution. But I think that collaborative work, I think as academics, we work collaboratively across disciplines, but projects like this are a real opportunity to work collaboratively outside of academia and have that alternative perspective. And I think something that's really important to think through is how is it meaningful for the people involved in the co-design, and how are they included after the award? Because I think that's a really important question that often gets missed.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you also touched on a point there that I feel like I should emphasize as well, because during this workshop, we're talking about kind of users and what your users might want, but there's different ways of thinking about that. So one is kind of the beneficiaries, the perhaps likely to be older people that you hope will kind of get the benefits of whatever you create. But actually your users might be someone different, or there might be really important stakeholders along that road as well. That might be health professionals, might be people working in care homes, and you need to understand their context and their experience as well in order to create a solution. If they're going to be people you rely on to deliver the solution, you really need to understand what life is like for them too, to create something that is kind of practical and feasible and will work for them.
And I think they're often missed. You know, it's like, oh, I'll talk to them once I've got something made. It's like involve them as early as possible. They are just as important. And I think the really exciting thing about projects like this is it's an opportunity to really make a difference for the beneficiary, for other stakeholders, which I found wasn't necessarily the case when it's slower research that comes out as a journal article. Like this is kind of just even just doing the design process, people find it really valuable to have an opportunity to have a voice and to be involved. And yeah, it's great.
Oh, that's great, thank you. Yeah, really great to hear your thoughts on these issues. Before we move on, any kind of last words of advice for people thinking of applying for a Catalyst Award?
So I came into the Catalyst Award with a really fixed idea of what I was going to design and deliver. And within the first, I think, 6 weeks, it was very apparent that that is absolutely not what the older adults we're working with wanted. And I think it's, so I'd say, come with a vision and a passion and a problem. Don't come with a solution. And also, I think as academics, we're very used to kind of having a proposal, writing it, funding it, and going and doing it. I'd really encourage people to enter this process with a real willingness to sit in uncertainty and not knowing for a long time, and to be really try to be comfortable with thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing and where this is going and what exactly am I doing on this project. That's, in my opinion, if you feel like that, you're doing it in the right way and sort of going with it. And I think also thinking about quite early on, what's after this, where's the future funding coming from, how's this being taken forward? And I'd say if people feel really excited about feeling uncertain and having the opportunity to take something out that can have a really big impact in the world, this is absolutely the right call. If those things don't sound exciting, maybe it's not the right call. And the other thing I'd say is, so far, like, the support and the engagement with Zinc is absolutely incredible. And that is something completely invaluable. I've been on various programs and things like that. What Zinc offer is not available anywhere else. And so also say it as a real opportunity for kind of ongoing work and things like that. Really see it as a way to be part of a community that's going to carry on indefinitely.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. That's really helpful to hear, and great to hear you're having a good experience. And I think what we hope for these awards is that they're really useful for the projects you're working on. They do advance your projects, but also that they give you some approaches, some tools, some links to people you might not have met before that are really helpful wherever you go on in your career following the Zinc program as well. So we hope it's a really big opportunity for people to start thinking in a different way and to have some make some connections and links that help them in their futures as well. So I think some of the—
one more bit of advice. I'd also try, this is such a practical thing, I'd really try hard to design something that you won't need ethics approval for, because there's not really time. So there's a challenge to everybody.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and that can be difficult depending on your university and their approaches, but it's one of the advantages in kind of doing a spin out or setting out something outside of the university is, and especially if you're not, if you're aiming for something that's more around kind of service design, service development, rather than a generalizable knowledge aiming to create papers out of it, you can potentially kind of think about your work in those terms as kind of user involvement, user engagement, more than kind of academic research, which can then allow you to avoid some of those kind of bureaucratic issues. So there's a kind of few key messages I think that came out of that conversation and kind of the presentation as a whole. So one is about thinking big, being clear about what your vision is. What's the biggest change that you could make? What if everything went well? What if everything went right? What's the difference you could make? Then kind of spending time and choosing the problem and thinking about the problem and having, taking the space to kind of explore that, find what you're passionate about and focus on where you can make the most difference. Then there's a bit about understanding your users, developing your ideas for solutions only after considering the problem from the eyes of the people that experience it and the eyes of the people that you'll need to help you put this solution into place. And also related to what Sarah was saying about the Zinc program support, you don't need to know everything right away, but it's important to start thinking about what those questions might be. Especially around feasibility, desirability and viability, and what are the sorts of things you could do to help start to get to some of the answers for those. So yeah, really importantly, you won't be on this journey alone. Zinc is here to help you develop your ideas. As part of the application process, we have but also we have an intensive program of support as people start on the program, and that includes weekly sessions. So currently this happens on a Wednesday afternoon where we have workshops and talks from experts. We provide executive coaching to people on the program. You get one-to-one support from a Zinc partner to talk through what you're working on and the problems you're facing. Access to user groups through Voice based in Newcastle University. Opportunities to showcase your projects and your audiences, and also opportunities to reach new connections from our extensive ecosystem that's been built up in the years that Zinc's existed to support startups and getting them out there in a really wide range of things, from things that are domain specific, so people working in the aging space, but also areas related to building business, so kind of building a business model, marketing, all sorts of areas. And we try and support people on kind of 4 different journeys. So one is the personal journey. What's the difference that you as an individual can make and what do you need to succeed? The product journey, so developing that solution and designing something that really meets a need for users. The enterprise journey, which is about finding a model which will let you reach everyone who needs your product and continue to grow beyond the Catalyst Awards. And then also the community journey, so accessing the advice and support your solution needs to thrive, and building some allies around you can support you on this. So that's it for this part of the workshop. And so next I'm going to hand over to Beth, who is going to talk you through this next stage in the application process and what you need to do. So Beth, it's over to you.
Well, thanks, Tim, and thank you, Sarah, as well. That was so great to hear kind of all your thoughts. So hi, everyone. It's wonderful to see everyone here today. I'm Beth. I work in the talent team at Zinc, and I'll be here to guide you through the application process, not just today, but over the coming months. So if you could change the slide, please, Tim. So we wanted to give you this opportunity to hear more about the process because we understand it's exciting, but it's also likely different to what you might be used to. And when we were considering how to build the process, this quote from a Nature article discussing how to rethink funding applications for science really stood out to our team. So it says that it might seem to make sense to support the research that is more likely to produce results, but under this philosophy, the successful proposals tend to be the most conservative, which typically produce only incremental advances in knowledge. And as this suggests, kind of often traditional grant applications can encourage predictability, and they want you to include a lot of detail regarding your methodology and expected outcomes and activities. But with our experience at Zinc with early stage innovation, it's shown that you need flexibility to be able to present your kind of boldest ideas and really make them a reality. So, and there's always an unpredictable element to life and your ideas will evolve, and you need to be able to move fast and adapt to these new challenges. So that's why our application process is moving away from this more traditional framework that's discussed in this quote, and away from emphasis on your expected output at the end of 1 year. Could you change the slide, please, Tim? Thanks. Yeah, and this is also because, as Tim's mentioned, we're looking for ideas that move beyond basic research proposals and outlive the awards funding. And we understand that you may still be discovering potential new avenues for your solutions, and that's what our program of support is there for. So instead, the application process will focus on developing your vision and your understanding of the problem you're solving and the users you'll be helping. And it's flexible to allow you to think big about how you can have impact beyond academia and beyond this funding round. So we introduced this collaborative process last year, and as the slide shows, the focus on flexibility and on impact, and the support offered by the Catalyst team throughout has been found to be incredibly refreshing and enjoyable by those involved, and as you just heard from Sarah, and it's kind of helped people to change the way they think about translating their research. And if you want to read more about this, and particularly specifically on last year's round, we've got a blog that we'll send around afterwards as follow-up. Could you change the slide, please, Tim? Thank you. So this is the process. It's split into 2 stages. The first is the expression of interest, which is your next step, and I'll go through that in a second. And you've already kind of taken the first step towards submitting a strong expression of interest by coming to this workshop today. And it's incredibly light touch and open to any UK-based researcher who's supported by an eligible research organisation and holds a PhD or equivalent professional experience, and who wants to kind of innovate in the healthy ageing sector. So after the expression of interest, applicants are shortlisted, and those who are shortlisted will move forward to stage 2. And this stage is intended to develop your proposal and your pitching skills. So you'll attend a development workshop and take part in supportive office hours to get personalised feedback on your proposal. And then you'll create your case for support before taking part in a 5-minute kind of Dragon's Den style pitch to a panel made up of members of the UKRI and Zinc teams, and also citizen judges. And then you'll be told if you're an awards winner by June. So by the time you're submitting your JES form to UKRI, you've developed your idea and you're sure that you have funding. And throughout this process, myself and my colleagues in the Catalyst team, you can see on the call, we're at the end of the email, catalyst@zinc.vc email. And if you've got any questions, we can kind of offer guidance throughout. If you could change the slide, please, Tim. Thanks. Okay, so the expression of interest is your next step to becoming a Catalyst Awards winner, and I hope all of you today will take that. There are 2 elements that you must submit to complete your expression of interest. So you've got the written application, which must include the letter of support from your head of department, and the video submission. And just to reiterate that all of these elements must be completed and submitted before the deadline for you to be able to progress to stage 2. So within the written application, you'll need to upload a 4-page document outlining your proposal. So we provide a template and guidance for this, and we'll email everyone when these are available. It's deliberately short and light touch and designed for you to showcase kind of what we've been talking about today. So in the lay summary, you can show that you understand how your user might see your idea. In the problem mapping, you'll be asked to demonstrate why your problem is an important one to tackle in the healthy aging sector. In the idea mapping, we'll want to see your early thinking about solutions and kind of the challenges that might be presented at this stage. And finally, we will need you to explain why you as PI are well placed to lead this project. And also we got asked a lot last year about references, and we aren't looking for kind of pages of references afterwards. If you want to include a few, you can. But we asked you to kind of stick to the guidance, stick to the template. We're only looking for the 4 pages. And yeah, and within this, as I mentioned, you'll also need to submit your letter of intent to support from your head of department. And as part of this, we really strongly recommend that you start these talks as soon as possible. You can't submit this letter after the deadline. So, and we also recommend that you reach out to your tech transfer office or enterprise or innovation office now, whatever they might be called within your university, as they might have extra support that they can give you at this time. And finally, once you've submitted your written application, you'll receive an email with a link to record your video submission, which you'll have 2 days to complete. The video is up to 2 minutes long, and as you can see, you'll be discussing what the impact is you want to have beyond academic research and why it matters to you. And it seems a bit of a different approach, but it's there because we understand that some people find it easier to talk rather than write about their passions. And we're really keen to get an understanding of what your vision is. So it's another opportunity for you to put this across and put across your motivation for the project. And if you do have any accessibilities with this, accessibility issues with this, then get in contact. If you could change the slide, please, Tim. Great, so yeah, just to confirm, the expression of interest submission is open from the 1st of February, and the final deadline for the written application is the 22nd of February. And this is the next step. So yeah, as I said, I hope that you will all take it. And before I hand back to Diane for a Q&A, I just wanted to leave you with a message from Susan, if you're happy to show that, Tim.
If you're thinking of applying for the Catalyst Awards, just go for it. It's okay. It's okay not to have a polished project. Give it a go, because everyone's nervous, everyone's unsure. It's a really unusual call. So there is no right and there is no wrong. There's the right fit and not a right fit. But my suggestion is to give it a go.
Brilliant, thank you.